Over 20,000 years ago, the first humans stepped foot in the Americas, utilizing something called the Beringia Land Bridge, an expansive land that connected Asia to North America. Over the next 10,000 years, humans followed the thawing glaciers south, eventually populating all of modern-day South and North America. Hello, welcome to the Polyglot Files. My name is Michael, and today we're talking about the languages that these first humans in the Americas spoke. Through these migrations over the Beringia Land Bridge, we know that these first humans brought their language with them, presumably languages from Asia. So the question of today's video is, are the indigenous languages of the Americas still related to the languages spoken in Asia, or did these languages develop independently? Namely, is it possible that American indigenous languages still resemble languages in Siberia or Sino-Tibetan languages like Mandarin Chinese? To understand the indigenous languages spoken in the Americas, we first need to return to the Beringia Land Bridge that we mentioned at the beginning of this video. Prior to 25,000 years ago, there was no human settlement or human presence in the Americas, at least according to research that we currently have. The first waves of human migration into Beringia started around 20,000 years ago, but humans weren't really able to advance farther south in the region because of the frozen land and glaciers from the Ice Age. As the glaciers began to melt, however, these populations pushed south, and by 10,000 BCE, humans had settled the majority of North and South America. On a genetic level, these first humans in the Americas are thought to have mixed East Asian and ancient North Eurasian ancestry. This would mean that these first humans in the Americas would have migrated from locations in modern-day China and Siberia. In fact, some estimates place the percentage of East Asian ancestry of these Paleolithic hunter-gatherers at 65% at the time of migration. While we don't have any written records of the languages that were originally spoken by these peoples migrating into North and South America, there are indigenous languages and indigenous language families that are still spoken today. Some of the larger indigenous language families in the Americas include the Algic languages, the Eskimo-Aleut languages, and the Quechuan languages. The relationship between these language families are often hard to establish, primarily due to the lack of written records as well as the effects of colonization. One of these indigenous language families, however, is said to maintain linguistic connections to languages that are spoken in Asia today. In fact, the best way to speak a language that is spoken today, even a language that is spoken in Asia such as Mandarin Chinese, is to engage in authentic conversations. For that, I recommend the sponsor of today's video, Talk to Me. With Talk to Me, I got comfortable expressing myself in creative conversation missions. Think chatting with a taxi driver, making friends at a cafe, or the one I just finished in Spanish where I attended a garage sale to furnish my new hypothetical apartment. These real-life challenges got me really using the language, but without the fear of messing up with a real person. And if I did get stuck, Talk to Me's native AI teacher was able to answer my questions and keep the conversation going. The best part? The Talk to Me team is always adding new community requested features. Things like Mad Libs-esque stories, a game where you describe hilarious, weird AI generated images, and a robust vocabulary study system. Further, Talk to Me has a large selection of languages to choose from, so click on the link in the description and give it a try today. One of the largest indigenous language families in the Americas, as well as a language family that still may maintain a linguistic connection to the languages of Asia, is the Na-Dené language family. Its ancestor language, called Proto-Na-Dené, is believed to be at least 6,000 years old, and its hypothesized location of origin is modern-day Alaska, very close to the historical Beringia Land Bridge. Today, the most spoken Na-Dené language is Navajo, which is a language spoken by about 170,000 people in the Four Corners region of the United States. The Na-Dené people also show something pretty interesting on a genetic level. According to researchers Eska Willersleff and David J. Meltzer, speakers of the Na-Dené languages derive about 10% of their ancestry from a common ancestor related to the modern-day Koryak people of northeastern Siberia. This means that there is a clear genetic link between some of the indigenous peoples in the Americas as well as some groups of Siberians, leading us to think that there is probably also a linguistic connection as well. Because of the supposed genetic links between the Na-Dené peoples and the peoples of Siberia, researcher Edward Vajda from the Western Washington University presented evidence for a larger language family that combined the Na-Dené languages and some languages in Siberia in 2008. He called this hypothetical language family the Na-Dené languages. The Yeniseian languages are spoken primarily by the Yeniseian peoples around the Yenisei River in central Siberia. Vajda postulates that on a linguistic level, the Na-Dené languages and the Yeniseian languages share many similarities in terms of phonology, morphology, and lexical similarity. In fact, he proposed that over 110 common words in both language families come from a common ancestor language, a supposed Proto-Dene Yeniseian. Further, Vajda presented genetic evidence for a connection between the Na-Dené and the Yeniseian peoples by concluding that the chromosomal haplogroup Q1 found in nearly all of the indigenous peoples of North America is also found in over 90% of the Yeniseian Ket peoples. This genetic link then supposedly proves that not only did these two people groups share a common homeland in the past, but they also probably shared a common language. So we can say with relative certainty that the indigenous peoples of the Americas are related to the peoples of Siberia on a genetic but also perhaps on a linguistic level. But what about other people groups and other languages in Asia? In fact, the first research linking the Sino-Tibetan languages, the language family of Mandarin Chinese, and the Na-Dené languages dates back to 1920, when researcher Edward Sapir and a group of other academics floated the idea that the language families shared certain linguistic features. While this didn't get much traction at the time, the idea was revisited in 2014 by researcher Jeffrey Cavaney. He compared pronouns in Sino-Tibetan languages and Na-Dené languages, and he stated that a linguistic connection could be plausible based on how similar the pronouns were. Further, in 2023, researcher David Bradley was able to establish that there were distant linguistic links between the Na-Dené, the Yeniseian, and the Sino-Tibetan languages. He argues that since it cannot be proven that these linguistic links came through language contact, considering these language families are spoken so far geographically from one another, that they then must exist because they all descended from a common ancestor language. It is noteworthy to mention, though, that this theory has not been widely accepted by the linguistics community at large, and neither has the Dene Yeniseian language family. But the genetic and linguistic evidence is interesting to consider and, in some cases, compelling. So what do you think? Are the indigenous languages of the Americas related to the languages of Siberia or the languages of East Asia? Leave me a comment below with your thoughts. You can also follow me on social media. I have a Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and as usual, I will see you next time. Goodbye!